Thank you, Mr. Young. It's a real pleasure to be speaking in the King's Speech debate today, setting out Labour's new programme for governments after 14 years of disastrous Tory governments. It's also an honour for me to be taking part in this debate as the MP for the new constituency of Widnes and Hale Wood, a constituency I was born and bred in. The Prime Minister has made it clear that Labour will be a government of service with a clear mandate to deliver the change the country desperately needs. The King's Speech shows that Labour have a plan to govern with serious solutions. Labour will make difficult decisions needed to fix basic problems facing this country. And I'm really pleased that we've made growth a central plank of government's policy, and of course the development of an incredible industrial strategy. We must also address the serious and long-term problem of productivity that this country has faced, and I hope that a new government will get onto that very, very quickly, because it's something that is a real hold on this country and holding us back. Now, the new Labour government has a daunting, this government of ours has a daunting job in tackling the many challenges facing the country after 14 years of mismanagement of our economy, epitomised by the disastrous Liz Truss budget, but also the running down and underfunding of our public services. The NHS and social care are in crisis. People are dying because of delays in treatment. Waiting in a corridor in a hospital now is the norm. And local authorities are struggling to remain financially viable. Rather than stick our heads in the sand or pull the wool over people's eyes as the Tories did, Labour will be straight with people about the problems we inherit. The truth is, there isn't a switch we can flick to fix the country's problems overnight. This is a packed King's Speech, and there's limited time to speak, so I'll focus on just a few areas. I really welcome the decision to bring rail services back into public ownership and improve passenger journeys and deliver better value for the taxpayers and establish the Great British Railways. Anyone who's travelled on the Avanti West Coast will know of the many, many problems faced over a long period of time now, whether it's the fact that they're late, cancelled, Wi-Fi doesn't work, or they haven't got any hot water, or whatever. There are continual problems. We know it's been a failure, so I welcome the decision on that. On the announcement to implement a Hillsborough law, this is something I think is really, really important, and it'll place a legal duty of candour on public servants and authorities. This government is determined to rebuild trust and foster respect and improve the transparency and accountability and address the culture of defensiveness in the public sector. And I'd like to pay a particular tribute in regards to this decision to the member for Liverpool Garston, who has worked tirelessly to get this to this stage. And I'm really pleased the government has adopted this. But also many colleagues here have worked with her and others on this particular policy. But also, I'd like to say that the member for Liverpool Garston and I go back some many years and work very closely with the Hillsborough families. I was actually at the Hillsborough disaster myself, and we know how terrible the experience has been for those families and the fight they've had to fight over the years and the way they were treated by the establishment is just absolutely a scandal. And I hope that they will be somewhat relieved and pleased now to see this progress. Now, also, I want to refer to the tackling the mental health crisis and modernising the Mental Health Act so it's fit for the 21st century. And this will help deliver the government's mission to see people living healthier lives for longer and put patients at the centre of decisions about their health. But I want to just raise as well, there's a massive challenge in terms of children's mental health waiting lists and children's mental health services, the Children's and Adolescent Mental Health Service itself. So I'd like really the government to focus on that particular part, because there is really problem. I'm sure every member of Parliament here will face many constituents come to them around this issue. But also the issue about suicides and having a proper policy and a plan to try and do all we can to reduce that, particularly amongst young men. So I welcome any changes and involvement the government is going to take place there. Now, planning, a lot has been said about planning, but I'd like to just really mention the issue about high streets. Many of us in our constituency are facing real issues around high streets and the way they've just been under massive pressure, many shops closing down and a need for renewal and regeneration. So I hope that part of the planning bill will actually look at that. Of course, welcome the reform of the bus service and bus system, because many communities actually, particularly over the last 10-15 years, have become more and more isolated because the bus services are being cancelled or reduced. So I hope, again, with this change in policy, we can actually make some improvements in the many communities who do feel isolated across this country, not least in my own constituency of Widnes and Hale Wood. Now, in the King's Speech, the government made a very clear commitment to NATO and said that remains unshakable, and it will maintain a strong armed forces, including a nuclear deterrent. And I welcome that from the Prime Minister and the government. Now, the Strategic Defence Review, which has been commissioned by the Prime Minister and was overseen by the Defence Secretary, is very welcome indeed, and it is a root and branch review. Now, those of us who've been around here for some time and actually put up with a Conservative government which has let down the armed forces and actually put our defence and security at risk in this country will welcome this review. Because we have to look at the state of what the situation. We've got the smallest army since Napoleonic times. Even the previous Secretary of State, a Conservative Secretary of State, said the armed forces have been hollowed out. We've got a shortage of munitions. There's major problems on procurement and wasted money that needs addressing, and I'm sure will be a priority of this new government. But also the focus as well has always been and will continue to be, and I'm again pleased to see the commitment in the King's speech about our commitment to Ukraine. But we face a real problem in terms of Russia, China, Iran and North Korea and the threat they pose to the world order and particularly democracies. So these are sort of big challenges that we've got to get to grips with. But looking again at our armed forces, about how we can improve, how we can make sure they get better funding, how we can make sure, very importantly, that funding that they do get is spent correctly and efficiently and not wasted. And I think it's very, very important for the future. Now, I'll certainly give way to the Honourable Member.
Can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for what he's saying about the Defence Forces? Very obviously for us in Northern Ireland there's always been a large recruitment of those who serve in the regular forces, but those who also are part of the territorial aspect of it. Does the Honourable Gentleman agree with me that when it comes to recruitment, in particular for Northern Ireland, there should be extra monies made available to ensure that those who want to join can join and the resources are made available for that particular purpose?
I understand the Honourable Member's pitch for extra resources for Northern Ireland, but I think he will also recognise that there is a major recruitment crisis in the armed forces which has been ongoing now for many, many years. It's not just an issue of recruitment, it's actually retaining good, experienced people. And that's really what we've got to really focus on. I'm sure that the Defence Review will look at that as well. But also, it's about looking after our service personnel, making sure they get better housing and better facilities, make sure that the pay is right, but also the veterans as well, and making sure we have the proper services and support for them. So I agree with the Honourable Member in terms of recruitment is a challenge, and we've got to really, really sort that out because it's weakening our armed forces currently. Now, Mr Chilpitz, I know time is going on. I just want to say a couple of things in conclusion. We still have a cost of living crisis in this country. Living standards are lower at the end of the last Parliament than at the beginning of the last Parliament. The tax burden is the greatest for 80 years. Our first King's speech will be a down payment, just the start of legislative plans Labour will set out over the next 5 years. Transforming our country will need to be patient and have focused work over a long period of time. As the Prime Minister has made clear, this will be a government of service and will do things differently and properly. Rather than gimmicks and bills that don't work, Labour will be focused on real change for working people.